We know that ultimately this election will be decided on Thursday by how many people we get on the ground volunteering and speaking to people. It's very clear the election is between the Reform Party and the Green Party. In Reform, Nigel Farage's candidate, we have a man who is literally paid to spread hate and division on TV. And in our Green Party candidate, Hannah Spencer, we have a local plumber who knows the value of work, who oozes compassion and empathy, and I think will not just be an amazing contributor for Gorton and Denton and for the Green Party, but frankly will elevate politics inside this country, because I think we desperately need people on those green benches that actually listen, that don't have pre-prepared answers, that are just alive and present in the moment, and that's Hannah Spencer. And so I'm so incredibly excited at this opportunity to get her elected, and frankly incredibly nervous at the even thought that on Friday morning we could be seeing Nigel Farage celebrate. I think that would be deeply damaging for the country. I think that would send the Labour government in an even worse direction, whereas I think a Green Party win will both be important for Gorton and Denton, but frankly that will send the clearest possible message to this government that they've been on completely the wrong course. Let me speak with absolute clarity. What Keir Starmer and this Labour government have said on drugs policy is vile. It debases politics, and actually I think people are sick of it, because I think people recognise it's an attack on a party that's trying to have a sensible grown-up conversation about a really serious issue. We have the worst amount of drug deaths in the whole of Europe, and I think that fact's often missing from this conversation. Well, the war on drugs is totally failed, and right now people can get drugs. Sadly, in a playground, people have access to drugs. So what we're talking about is regulating drugs. We're saying if people are going to buy drugs, are they going to buy them on street corners, down alleyways, or actually we're going to take a public health approach, which is about harm reduction. You don't need to take my word for it. You could take David Lammy's word for it. Just a few years ago, he was saying the same thing. You could listen to Nigel Farage in 2014, who said, the war on drugs has failed, we need to legalise some drugs. So these politicians are frankly full of hypocrites. They're people who said one thing a few years ago when they looked at the evidence, and when it comes to a by-election where they can make cheap political attacks for short-term gains, they're launching these attacks. But the people who really suffer are the people in this country who are suffering from a problematic relationship with drugs, who really need that support from public health experts. It depends what your definition of Zionism is. I'm really clear, though, that Benjamin Netanyahu is committing a genocide against the Palestinian people, a genocide that our government is not just complicit in, but actively enabling. I don't think it's offensive to call that racist. In fact, I think it's offensive to turn your back from it or to be complicit in it. I think that's where the real conversation should be. I mean, it's difficult to even respond to that, because for years now, anyone who has a phone or a TV screen has seen pictures of dead children, of people with their heads blown off, of some of the most brutal and dystopian scenes that I've ever seen in my lifetime.
Hamas, though? Isn't that ultimately because Hamas did what they did on October 7th?
What happened on October 7th was absolutely outrageous and a horrific attack. And nothing justifies what Israel have done for the last couple of years, that, again, our government is not just complicit in, but actively enabling. We could certainly stop our role in this by stopping selling arms to Israel, by stopping sharing intelligence, and making sure that we're speaking with one voice, that it's time to end the genocide. Well, it's helpful in this conversation that you're talking to a Jewish man from Manchester. In fact, I'm one of 5 Jewish people in British political history who have been in positions of leadership in politics. So I take anti-Semitism really seriously. I've experienced it myself. And I take Islamophobia seriously and any form of racism and hatred. I also take equally seriously the conflation of anti-Semitism with criticism of the Israeli government. And we need to be absolutely clear when we're criticising Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli government and when we're criticising anti-Semitism. And actually what I find more cynical than anything is when people like Michael Gove, or indeed Sarah Vine, who compared me to Adolf Hitler this week. I mean, it doesn't get much more anti-Semitic than comparing a Jewish man speaking out against a genocide to one of the worst atrocities that ever happened to Jewish people. I mean, it's difficult to even be coherent about this word because it's absurd we're even having this conversation. It's not me that's saying it's a genocide in Israel, although I am saying that. It's lots and lots of scholars, genocide scholars, it's Amnesty International, it's the United Nations, it's the International Criminal Court who have put out a warrant on Benjamin Netanyahu. I want to say this is not baked in. In fact, I had a meeting with Miles, campaign manager, about an hour ago while I was on the team that said this will be decided on Thursday on election day.
Yeah.
There are still so many undecideds, and ultimately our job is to go to speak to all of those undecideds and make them know Green versus Reform. Reform is the politics of hate and division. Greens is the politics of hope with a plan. Let's get Hannah over the line. Thank you very much. Parliament, who will work hard for them every single day, but actually this election is going to ripple throughout the entire country. And when I became leader of the Green Party, and no pressure, Hannah, exactly. This is where it begins, is to really single 1% is a popular policy. The fact that people aren't okay with a genocide in Gaza is something that people, unsurprisingly, there's always political books. Lots of them will be written. Gorton and Denton will not just be a paragraph, but actually probably a whole chapter about this Parliament and how things continue to make. In which case I will hand you over to who I hope will be the next MP for Gorton and Denton in about 72 hours.
Times a million, because this is now the crucial hours that are happening before us that we can shape with what we do. And just yesterday we were out door knocking and we've got out, some journalists there. This should just be quite basic, like they should come as standard in a city and a country where we aren't poor, where we live in the shadows of skyscrapers. That is going to continue, and it can only continue on Thursday if we get everybody who's told us they're going to vote Green out on the doorsteps, because we know that reform voters are actually the most likely group of people who will go.
I've got the smallest PS as well.